So you may have heard the word altitude thrown around quite recently in sporting terms, but what is it and what impact can it have on our professional athletes? So tonight and Monday morning, England's nations are taking on two world superpowers in football and in rugby, but their biggest enemy isn't going to be the Springboks or Mexico, it's going to be the air. So tonight, England rugby are travelling to Ellis Park in Johannesburg in South Africa. Monday morning, England football team play in Mexico in the World Cup round of 16 in Mexico City. Both cities sit at a massive high altitude of up to 2,200 metres above sea level. But what is altitude and why is it an absolute nightmare for our athletes? So here is some of the science behind it. So at sea level, air is dense, packed with oxygen molecules. But as you climb into the mountains of South Africa or Mexico, the barometric pressure drops. The air becomes thin. The percentage of oxygen remains at 21%, but because the pressure is lower, the air molecules are spread further apart. Every single breath you take delivers significantly less oxygen into your lungs, which means your bloodstream is starved of oxygen and your muscles start screaming for fuel. So for the rugby boys tonight in Johannesburg, sitting at over 1,700 metres, this completely reshapes the physical battle of the game. Rugby relies on short, explosive bursts of power followed by quick recovery periods. At high altitude, though, your body cannot clear lactic acid normally. So that lactic acid builds up twice as fast, creating a heavy toxic burning sensation in your legs and in your lungs. Recovery windows between those brutal tackles vanish, which in rugby isn't ideal. To make it tougher though, the thin air means less aerodynamic drag on the ball. Because the air doesn't push back against the ball like normal, it flies significantly further. So tactical clearing kicks will travel 10 to 15% further than they do at Twickenham. So the positioning of the fullbacks will be even more crucial. The fullbacks may have to sprint much further deeper just to try and cover that extra distance that the ball has travelled, which when they're getting less oxygen into their lungs makes it a much tougher challenge. Then Thomas Tuchel's men step into the absolute cauldron of the Azteca Stadium in Mexico City at over 2,200 metres. Football players cover anything from 7 to 11 km in a game regularly. In thin air though, the heart rate skyrockets to maximum capacity almost instantly just to try and keep the muscles moving. If England tried to play a high-pressing, relentless running game here without being fully acclimatised, the players will start experiencing severe oxygen deprivation, leading to dizziness, nausea, and even potentially fainting. And the physics for the way the ball moves are even worse than in rugby. So less air resistance, a football will travel faster, swerve less, and it also fails to drop or dip normally like it does in crosses or long-range shots in England. Goalkeepers absolutely hate it because a shot from 30 yards out stays hit and won't move normally like it does in England. But how do rugby players and football players deal with altitude? So rather than having to physically deal with altitude by having to travel to these countries, with advancements in technology, players can mimic the breathlessness of playing rugby at altitude thanks to some Bain-style masks. So they use things called portable hypoxic generators, as they're technically called. They restrict oxygen available to the players whilst they train on watt bikes. The mask works to try and sharpen the repeated sprint power and bank the breathlessness feeling. So you're not actually changing the physiologically a huge amount, but you're trying to prepare them for that breathlessness feeling and then sharpen the repeated sprint effects, which then programs the muscle fibres to try and work at that faster pace. So dealing with altitude is the ultimate fitness and mental test across the different sports. Will the rugby team and the Free Lions be able to survive the altitude? I guess we'll find out soon.